Okay, hello everyone. This is CounterYolo, bringing you another video in Star Trek Online. And in today's video, I'll be talking about some of the best low-by-store starships inside the game. We do have a new event that's making low-by a little bit more accessible again inside the game, so we'll be talking more about that. Then I'll be going into the best low-by consoles in my opinion, and then some baselines comparing to Sea Storm Fleet, and then some great starships for the trade and low-by ships to actually fly inside the game. Description will include time links for everything. So let's go ahead and get started. The big changes, obviously we have 4 parts to this campaign instead of 3. I'm sure some of you all have been playing this for a while. I got a new job, so I moved pretty far across the country, so I've literally just gotten into my apartment to start recording. So perhaps things have changed in some announcements since this was initially announced. This was some of the original data that I had right before I moved. So if stuff has changed here, feel free to let us all know in the comments. I'll be starting to play the game again right after I record this. So we'll see how things go. The big things obviously is that instead of just the coupon, it's either coupon plus 200 low-by or enough for a low-by starship or low-by console. Low-by starship is 900 low-by generally, besides low-by sales, or option 2 is 1000 low-by, which is enough for a low-by starship. Basically, it makes it so that if you have all ships you ever want, you could at least get a low-by starship, sell it on the exchange, get a couple 100 million energy credits, and buy some trades or things from loot boxes that you don't want to gamble to get, but are willing to just pay to have someone else gamble for you. Obviously, for the big biases for this list, is that unlike the list on Reddit, which I haphazardly made in like 30 minutes, just making an Excel table based upon base stats and listing some of the traits I thought were particularly good, and then just arbitrarily moving them around from there, and putting the Sona Battlecruiser and the Voth Bastille at the bottom because I hate both those starships. This one there's a little bit more thought into it, and it's going to be versus the Sea Storm Fleet starships. Now, I will not be ranking just a big gigantic list like I read of all of them. I will instead be saying, here are the ones I think are worthwhile to actually get. If it's not on this list, I probably don't think they're actually particularly worthwhile. There's a lot that are still fun in there to use and look cool, but at least from a stats perspective or from a performance perspective, maybe from a strong trade or something, I don't think a lot of them are really worth too much to actually get anymore. A lot of them are pretty old. Kubrick doesn't really add too many low-by starships in the game anymore, and most of them nowadays are more just tier 6 updates from a lot of the older tier 5 starships that they haven't gotten around to making tier 6s of, because it also takes a little bit less work for them to do, because then it's just adding a trait and a new look. They don't have to worry about really doing much for a console besides just adding the tier 6 stats to whatever they decide to do for it. There'll be 3 lists, a list of some of the better low-by store consoles, starships you get for the trait, and starships you get to actually fly. So this is we're going to go into it, and yeah, this is the best low-by consoles part now. So here are the 3 best consoles in my opinion. Binaural is the best one for crit severity, and generally speaking, because there's a lot more crit chance available in the game now, stacking more crit severity is pretty nice, and from a single standalone console, this is the best one in the entire game. It starts at rare from the low-by store, so it takes a little bit extra stuff to upgrade it up to Epic Mark 15, but whenever you get there, it gives you about 26% crit severity, so that's pretty nice. The Ultimate Swarm Processor is a pretty nice standalone console. It gives you about 4% crit chance, just like the Lorca console, except this console doesn't need to be in a tactical slot. The Oracle one is still viable because that one gives you a 2-piece with the torpedo or the dual beam bank that gives you a stacking up to 30% crit chance, so that's pretty nice. This one doesn't give you that, but it gives you a lot of accuracy, and you can put it in any console, not just a tactical. In terms of the other parts of the set, the Kelvin torpedo also fires really fast, so that's pretty nice. Also does some debuffing as well, and the Plasma Omni here is a set Omni, so for plasma sets, if you're wanting to have 2 Omnis in your bag, one crafted and one not, the one not being one from a set, this is your only Plasma Omni available inside the game that's from a set. So that is pretty costly, but also potentially worthwhile too, depending on what your build's actually going to be. The full 3-piece set is worthwhile for beam builds. In terms of cannon builds, I'm not sure that losing a cannon in front or legitimately just losing a turret in the back to not have anything fire is really going to be worthwhile from a DPS perspective. It could be, but that's really a thing that you have to decide and test for yourself. Attack and kinetic converter sometimes it's in build, sometimes it's not because there's just not enough space for it. It's basically an extra assimilated module for you that gives you extra turn rate. It's basically what it's there for. If you have space for it, great. If you have other powerful things like domino that you need to put in instead, it's not the end of the world to skip out on that one. Very situational ones. The Zinkethi set is great for Tetryon builds. You're only going to use all 3 of them if you're going to be using a Tetryon dual beam bank build with the universal console plus the torpedo plus the dual beam bank Tetryon mode. The universal console, as long as you're forward firing, so dual cannons and dual beam bank builds, the console basically works as almost a full Tetryon tactical console. That's effectively how the console works, but with a little bit of flight turn rate as well. If you're going to be doing a Tetryon dual cannon build, you'll just use a dual cannon plus the console. If you're going to be doing a beam array Tetryon build, you'll just probably want to use the torpedo and the console. The torpedo console also works for torpedo builds because the 2-piece gives you an extra 25% projectile damage. So that plus the 10% weapon damage to foes in front 90 degrees means it's basically an extra tactical console worth of torpedo damage as well. So something else to keep in mind is in there for you. Again, dual bank builds will use all 3, but anyway, the Delphi application set is starting to get outscaled by other things in the game, to my understanding. There's so many cheaper options available inside the game. I think that this set could deserve a buff, actually, frankly, to keep it in competition in the side torp category, frankly. The other weapon in here is an anti-proton dual beam bank. Again, dual beam banks, there's not very many of them that are special, so they get outscaled, frankly, by a lot of the special beam arrays in the game right now. So just something to think about. The 2-piece gives you crit chance, it's very similar to the assimilate module, which is why it was used a lot by a lot of side torps back in the day. It's not used as much anymore. We'll still see it from time to time. I still feel that particle emission plasma, the torpedo from the Voth reputation, and then the dark matter torpedo are probably the 3 torpedoes that you want to use for your front weapons, but that's just me personally. Anyway, for baseline stats for the starships themselves, I have 18 starships here. I'm not going to go into much detail on these. This is a Lobi starship video, not a best fleet and C-Star starship video. So this is just stuff that I feel that are some of the stronger ones in the game that either are earnable for the fleet through fleet modules, or, well, why choose Lobi if the ship you're actually wanting in terms of performance and playstyle is already available from the C-Store, and you can just get a C-Store coupon, something like that, and get it there. Obviously, PS4 and Xbox players, I understand you don't have that C-Store coupon option. It's just event starships, but sorry, this is the best that I can do. Most of the event ships, frankly, are not really chosen for the actual performance themselves. So here's the 3 best C-Store starships in my opinion for Commander Tactical. The Vanguard warship's pretty good. The Pilot Warbird is also nice as well, and then the Operations Dreadnought Warbird, in my opinion, is the best of those warbirds, and is basically your budget juggernaut, but in the C-Store. In terms of fleet, I like the Jonah Vanguard Timber warship. I think that one's pretty good. I don't like any of the other tactical ships, in my opinion, too much, so I just say go with a Raider if you don't like the temporal warships. When it comes to commander engineering, the Martok Tactical Battlecruiser from the C-Store, from the flagship Starship bundle, is actually pretty nice. It's the only commander engineering that naturally has 5 tactical consoles. Yes, if you say Commander Miracle Worker, then you could say yes, those Miracle Worker battlecruisers have 4+1, so you get an extra console that makes it 5. But this one naturally had 5 tactical consoles on it. It didn't need any special gimmicks to get that, it just has it. So hopefully whenever they give KDF some love and hopefully add an anniversary bundle for the KDF, they make this one a Commander Engineering Miracle Worker to make sure that this ship is played a lot more. Anyway, the Canadian flight deck carrier is also pretty nice. It's a fully statted flight deck carrier from the C-Store. Then the Kronos Dreadnought Cruiser is, I would say, one of the mainstays in terms of general cruisers inside the game. In terms of the fleet, obviously the fleet Miracle Worker battlecruisers and the Suliban Silic are the two big standouts. Either you want just pure damage, or you want to have some damage with some extra fun with 2 hangar bays. Depends on what you actually want to do. I think they're both fantastic, and those are some of the best fleet ships in general right now. I also have that the Kosha and Cardenas here just because those 2 ships are from Tier 1 military. The Suliban's from Tier 4, and the Miracle Worker battlecruisers are from Tier 3 military. So the Kosha and Cardenas are generally speaking available to all fleets in the game. All fleets that have any sort of activity are going to have access to those ships. Suliban Silic and the Miracle Worker battlecruisers might not be able to whatever fleet that you're a part of right now. In terms of Commander Science from the C-Store, there are very few fully statted Commander Science starships inside of the C-Store. Most of them, if anything, are just ones in which you need to go to the fleet to get the rest of their stats and console and such. These are the 3 that I consider the best. The Battle Cloaking Warbird that has a hangar bay and a secondary deflector, which is rare. The Reconnaissance Explorer Warbird over there. The Canadian Science Dreadnought's okay if you want some extra hull. Obviously, Science Spearhead and Science Destroyers are a bit better in terms of similar stats, but much better turning. And then, of course, the Eternal's been a mainstay for a super long time inside the game, so that's there as well. In terms of the fleets, the Discovery era science vessels are decent. The Nautilus is great as well. And then because I'm a tank captain, the Hanom has honestly a fairly high amount of hull and shields considering that it's from the fleet, but also has 4 tactical consoles on it. You want to go slightly higher than this, you're going to like the Fleet Sutherland types of starships, that 3 starship set, which has slightly higher hull than the Fleet Hanom, but you lose 2 of your tactical consoles. The Fleet Sutherland only has 2 tactical consoles as a science starship, so very limited in what it can do, and it basically has to go side torp. This one could do whatever you want, although it doesn't. Obviously, it's a tier 5 use, so you don't get any specialization seating on it. Alright, so let's get to the Lobi starships themselves. Obviously, I'll start with the ones that are just for traits, because of course I'm going to do that. The 3 to consider first, by the way, is the Tholian Ectomy. If you're doing any sort of exotic-based build, you're going to love this thing. If you're a science tank in the game, I consider this a must-have. Everyone else, you can work around not having it. If you're a science tank, you're kind of stupid if you don't have this trait at this point. Attack Officer is better. You get bonus exotic damage, and you get bonus hull and shield healing too to survive the threat that you're doing. Whether you're a tank or not, science does a lot more threat than everything else inside the game, respectively. So it's very nice. Anyway, the Xindi Starship gives you the trait Super Weapon Ingenuity, which increases beam overload's duration by 5 seconds, so that beam overload's duration is now 15 seconds. Beam overload has a 15-second global cooldown, which means you could have this up 100% of the time if you have your cooldown management done properly for your starship, which is big for DPS numbers, by the way. Just the way it is. If you're doing beam overload, this is a priority trait to get. The Sonar Battlecruiser is notable for the trait Special Warheads. Basically, if you're doing any type of torpedo-based build, you're going to probably want to slot this trait in there somewhere. Whether it's pure torp or a side torp, you're probably going to want this trait. I don't use it on my side torp because besides my science ROM in the main, my engineering ROM in the main, my tactical ROM in the main. I don't really give any of my other captains Lobi starships or lockbox starships or promo pack starships anymore. I just keep them with Sea Store and Fleet starships primarily, just the way that I am now. Others for niche builds, the Zal Heavy Cruiser. If you're going to try to play PvP but have lots of lag, Invincible is going to save your life. And then for the NX Escort refit, if you don't have the Legendary Bundle, but want the trading console, or you have the Legendary Bundle but you want to fly an easier to fly Starship, and the NX Escort refit's nice as well. It completes the DPRM 2-piece for extra phase disruptor and plasma damage. Preferential targeting is decent for beam overload builds as well. However, if you're going to do beam overload, the Zindi Starship is the priority to get it over the NX, frankly. Also, if you're not a Federation captain, you can get the NX trading console for half price, because you don't have the option to buy the Starship if you're a Klingon allied captain. As for the Lobi starships themselves to fly, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be listing 3 science starships, and then I'm going to go into the 3 direction energy weapon starships, one for dual cannons, one for beams, and then starship that I consider very, very good for both. I generally what most people consider the best starship in all of the Lobi store, but that's just me talking, I guess. I always have to include the Not Cool Damage, just because it's one of the most underrated starships in the entire game. It's basically the Sphere Builder science vessel from the Lobi store as well, but it's a gimmicky version. It doesn't have Commander Center Operative. It doesn't have a 4G layout. It has one less tactical console for the cost that it moves a lot faster. It's got a battle cloak, and it's got this gimmicky console on it, which allows you to be immune to damage about 25% of the time. And you get an additional 12% crit severity, which, since you're probably going to be using Particle Manipulator from tier 15 science anyway, that gives you, which ideally, if you have your build properly, is going to already give you a 50% crit chance on your science abilities anyway. Having additional crit severity to make your science abilities crit harder is also nice as well. The hull doesn't matter as much because you have that extra console, which makes you immune to all damage for 25% of the time. It's not like Reverse Shield Polarity, which gives you immunity to energy damage. This one truly does give you immunity to all damage inside the game. If you realize that there's a torp that's about to crit you for 1 million damage, click this right before it goes off, and boom, you do not die. You can survive through it. It's very, very useful. It's only usable on the not cool ships, which is why it's in this section here. And number 2 here is a surprising one. And it was something that was brought up to me after I made the Reddit post, and they were like, why is the Voth Bastille towards the bottom? Isn't it just the legendary Glenn, but a little bit weaker? And I started to think about it. I'm like, oh, they both have Commander Science Temple Operative. They both can have Lieutenant Commander Tactical in their seating. Stats are saying they're both science vessels. Just that you're down 1 tactical console. It's a 3-3 layout instead of 4-2. And it's a Lieutenant Command instead of Lieutenant Commander Command, so it's only concentrated firepower 2 you would get on the ship. But I'm like, there's nothing else closer to the Glen than this ship right now. So yeah, pretty much it is just a legendary Glen, but it's from the Lobi store, and KDF captains can also fly it too. So yeah, if you're a KDF captain and you're like, oh man, I really want to fly legendary Glen because I like it. I like the bridge off your seating and such. The Voth Bastille is the closest ship in the game to it from a stats perspective, in my opinion. Other people probably will disagree and say something else. I think it's the closest in the game, frankly. Number 1 for science vessels, of course, is the Sphere Builder multi-person science vessel. It's super good. It's basically just a slightly upgraded and better version of the Eternal. You swap the engineering and tactical seating around, so you're able to get torpedo spread 3 on her. You have a 4-2 layout, so the higher hull and 1 extra tactical console. Otherwise, the Eternal and this ship are basically the exact same. And both of them also have an exclusive console that gives you an extra 15% exotic damage. So they're both very good and very close. They're some of the most well-rounded science vessels in the entire game. If you're going for something more extreme than those, you're going to be losing something from them, whether it's a hangar bay or maybe it's 4-2 layout from the Edwilg or something, or some of the turning and mobility that some of these ships have. You're going to be losing something. Anyway, so when it comes to the directed energy weapon builds, we'll start with the Maquis Raider. Your 2 other popular commander tactical miracle worker starships in the game are both from promo packs. Both the Balmor Juggernaut as well as the Zenkethi Zentaur Carrier are both from there. The Juggernaut is for directed energy weapon builds, and the Zenkethi Zentaur is for torp builds. But yeah, both of those commander tactical miracle worker starships from there are from promo packs, and the Maquis Raider is a miracle worker starship and it's from the Lobi store. And its hull ratio is not bad. And it's commander tactical miracle worker, and because it is a raider, you do get universal seating for the rest of it. So you're able to have 6 tactical consoles on this ship with very high bridge officer seating, very high mobility, so dual cannons is very, very easy to do on this ship. But you do lose 1 rear weapon slot. If you are able to do raider flanking properly, you can get close to the same amount of damage in terms of output as what you would have if you had a full 8 weapons. But for most players, you're going to be down a little bit in damage there, but you do have an extra tactical console effectively to try to substitute for it. Whether that ends up performing better for you than the fleet and miracle worker battle cruisers is really up to you in terms of your own parsing and such. It could be worthwhile for you. Some people on Reddit seem to think it's super, super insanely good. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely fun to fly, and I have one. It's fun to fly. The Plasma Storm module is fun to use. I think the Plasma Storm module is more for a science build than for a dual cannon build that this is basically designed to try to do. But it's still a great starship. It's basically a budget Balmor Juggernaut from the Sea Store that has less hull. In case you want to do something like that, and then you can play around with what the CV you like, and then start brainstorming, hey, this is going to be my theoretical ideal ship, and Cryptic eventually gives that bridge officer combination that I really, really, really want. You can start by playing around with things and figure out what you're wanting from here. When it comes to beams, the Huznok warship is very, very, very good. It's generally considered the best tactical temporoperative starship in the game. Fantastic stats. The fleet temporoperative warships are close. I still think the Huznok is much better, especially from a stats perspective. I'm pretty sure from a DPS perspective, it's also quite a bit better as well because of its bridge accuracy in particular. Directed energy flux from the starship also gives you an additional amount of bonus damage whenever you use directed energy modulation or temporoperative abilities. Causal reversion does a stupid amount of damage, frankly. So combined with beam overload, it's great. Obviously, Super Ingenuity is the priority trait to get first, though, for beam overload builds. If you can only afford to get one, get that and fly a fleet temporoperative warship in the meantime while you save up more Lobi, or wait for another event like this later on to get another Huznok warship. You get a Huznok warship later on to be able to use. The console isn't particularly great, frankly, but it does give you an extra 12% directed energy damage. So I mean, it's a decent filler console until you can find something better to use. It's not unlike a lot of other consoles which are like, nah, this is just basically worthless anyway. I'll just slot something else. This one's actually still will increase your damage. Of course, though, the Kelvin Vengeance is just basically the best in the Lobi store. You do need to keep in mind It is not usable by Federation allied Romulans, but if you're a regular Federation captain or a Federation Dominion captain, you are able to use this ship. It has a 5-3 weapon layout with very high hull HP. It has one hangar bay with some of the strongest pets in the entire game when it comes to damage, and commander engineering intelligence. So it has a very nice combination in there. It's got a cloak as well because of that, and it's honestly really fun to fly. It's really big and bulky though. Some people still have the old visual bug on it, and they refuse to change it. So you will see Vengeances flying around from time to time that are a lot bigger than what you would expect them to be, frankly. The Legendary Kelvin Enterprise is the closest to this thing, or you can go with the Fleet Avenger Battlecruiser. Is also a close one from the fleet as well. You're still missing quite a bit whenever you're flying those starships, frankly. The Vengeance still is very, very good. You can do damage with this thing. You can do tanking with this thing. It's a fantastic, well-rounded starship, frankly. That really doesn't have things that are like it inside the game. There are things that can match in terms of the roles that it's doing, and there are other things that in those roles it can outclass it. But because this thing is a very nice, well-rounded starship, for the average player, you can probably buy this ship and it'll get you through most things inside the game. It's just what it comes down to. But anyway, that's basically it for this video. Thank you for watching. This is my first video in my new apartment, so again, also let me know in the comments how the audio was, so that I can see if I can make things better for you all. Again, the goal is to try to have videos come, as I said in my announcement post on Facebook last week. The goal is to put out videos on Mondays from now on. So whenever we get new comparisons and stuff, new stats, those videos will come out on Mondays. The Monday after whatever the announcement is, that's when the video will come out, because I'll be mostly doing these recordings and such on Saturdays going forward. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week.